Ja, herzlich willkommen bei Bickel TV einfach anders. Ich freue mich jetzt, Brian Hooker interviewen zu dürfen. Ich habe ihn bis jetzt noch nicht kennengelernt, aber ich habe natürlich schon viel mitbekommen. Wächst One und Wächst Two hat er auch mitgemacht, eine sehr wichtige Dokumentation. Und ich werde ihm natürlich jetzt in Englisch ein paar Fragen stellen. Ihr wisst, immer die gleiche Geschichte mit meinem Englisch, aber ich hoffe, das kommt einigermaßen rüber. Ich spicke ein bisschen mit meinen Notizen, aber ich freue mich jetzt, ihn zu begrüßen. Very welcome, Brian. It's a pleasure to meet you. First time for you also in Switzerland, right?
Yes, this is the first time in Switzerland, and it's absolutely wonderful country, and the hospitality has been just super. Thank you so much.
You like it so far? It's everything fine?
I do. I have enjoyed it. Ich habe es sehr gern.
Ah, you speak German as well. That is very good.
Nur ein bisschen.
Sehr gut. Would you mind to introduce yourself, that the people know who
Sure.
are you?
My name is Brian Hooker. I have a PhD in biochemical engineering. I have been in biotechnology research for the past 35 years. I'm also the Chief Scientific Officer of Children's Health Defense. And I'm the very proud father of a 28-year-old male son who is vaccine injured and regressed into autism. He is now doing very, very well, and still has autism, but he's progressing beyond, our expectations by far.
Very good. Good to hear. So this probably was also the motivation to start investigation about this stuff. Is this correct?
He was and is still my primary motivation, and being able to prevent other children from having chronic diseases, autism, neurodevelopmental disorders, autoimmune diseases, and so forth. He is my light and my motivation, so I'm very, very happy to do this for the rest of my life.
This is for me an important question. For yourself, I guess it's clear that the vaccines are not good for our body, but what proofs you would say it's also in a study or whatever, it's clear the vaccine are bad for our body? What would you say to people they are not really like a doctor?
Well, I've studied vaccinated children and completely unvaccinated children. We follow at Children's Health Defense, my science team and I follow approximately 4,000 children that we have followed since their birth. The youngest now is 4 years old and getting older. The older children are upwards to 13, 14 years old. And so we know the health outcomes of those children who've never seen a vaccine. And we also follow another 4,000 vaccinated children. So we can compare them directly. And by far, the unvaccinated children are much healthier. You see much less autism. You see about 20 times less ADHD.
20 times.
20 times less ADHD, about 5 times less autism, 5 times less asthma, and even infections. Children who receive lots of vaccines have more infections. So we see probably 3 times less recurrent ear infections, strep infections, and respiratory infections in unvaccinated children. So the results are very, very compelling. We built this database directly because of my background. I knew how to find these pockets of unvaccinated children. Their lifestyle is very similar to children who receive vaccines. They're not Amish, they're not a part of a religious group. They just happen to be unvaccinated children in medical practices. And the difference is very, very clear. And I have to say that looking at every health metric, the unvaccinated children are healthier.
Wow. Is this study still going, or what's the result now using for?
We started the study in 2017, and it has been going since. We've published two major publications, one in 2020, one in 2021, that show the difference in the health outcomes of the unvaccinated, and we're preparing to start to publish more. 3, 4, fifth publication will be coming out very soon, again comparing the health of those children who receive vaccines versus those that are unvaccinated.
Can you already say that the results are even stronger for the unvaccinated people?
Yes, I can definitively say that the results are much stronger for unvaccinated children. We've also looked at different databases. You know, we have this one database that we've created with these children, but we've looked at different organizations, even different countries, to see if we can confirm our results. And consistently, we see that those children that are vaccinated, sure, if you want to prevent the measles, then you can get a measles vaccine. If you want to prevent the chickenpox, you can get a chickenpox vaccine. But there are many other factors that come into play. And when we look at those other factors, those other diseases, even infant mortality, we see better results in unvaccinated children.
And one argument is also benefits risk.
Yes.
And this, I guess, sometimes is not really controlled by the pharma correctly, and this is a big problem.
Yes, the pharmaceutical industry has never done a no vaccine control in testing any of the vaccines on the current U.S. Vaccination schedule. So it makes it very difficult to understand, well, what are the risks and what are the benefits, because they've never looked at the appropriate control group. They always will test a new vaccine against an old vaccine, or maybe an adjuvant or an ingredient in a vaccine, but they truly never have tested against what we call a saline or a saltwater solution placebo.
I was really shocked. I didn't know this 3 years ago. That was for me new, because placebo means for me nothing.
Right.
Nothing. And that's not the case at all with all studies they have done.
In every study that they've done on a childhood schedule, except for independent researchers, there's about 11 studies that have been done independently, they always test against a group of children who've either received the vaccine or they've received a lower dose of maybe a vaccine component like aluminum adjuvant, but they never have a zero exposure control.
For me, as no medicine expert, makes no sense at all, because
Right.
then you have side effects of both sides and you cannot compare.
Exactly. It is a stacked deck, as we say, you know, like playing cards. It's a stacked deck. The outcomes are biased not to find vaccine adverse events. So whenever you raise the floor of your control to say, for example, the HPV vaccine, the new HPV vaccine, Gardasil 9, that came out in 2017, the clinical trial was compared against the old Gardasil vaccine. And so if they had the same rates of adverse events, then they were in the clear. But the same rates of adverse events in both of these vaccines are very, very high. 2% of all the vaccinated children that received this vaccine ended up with an autoimmune disease. So that's unacceptable. But if they compare them together, then 2% here, 2% here, oh, everything's great, and they prove the vaccine.
That's crazy.
It does not make any sense.
Wow. That's the number of need to, what's the number need to vaccine, or what's the, it's two numbers? How many people I have to vaccine to prevent one disease? What's the term of that? I've forgotten.
Right. I don't know the term directly, but it's, you know, how many vaccines have to be given to prevent one infectious disease. And when you look at that analysis for the COVID shot, it was over 1 million, because it didn't really prevent disease. So when you look at vaccines that are performing poorly, then you know that it will take many, many vaccines in order to prevent the disease. And truly, there are, not only is it the COVID shot, but the pertussis portion of the DTaP vaccine, the pertussis portion, it doesn't prevent transmission. So they have fully vaccinated populations that have a big outbreak of pertussis. Everybody in the population is vaccinated, but still yet many, many children, upwards to 50, 70% of these children are still vulnerable to getting pertussis. Same thing with mumps in the MMR vaccine. Mumps is a very benign disease in childhood, but the mumps virus in the vaccine degrades very quickly. And so they've never overcome that problem, but yet they still vaccinate for mumps. And what happens is that children get mumps later. They might have a little immunity, but it wears off. They get it later on in life when it's more severe.
That's the big problem. But then it makes, I have to say, there's no chance, because if they're almost the same, the placebo and as you mentioned before,
yes,
it's incredible, because I guess if all people of the world would see this interview right now, they would be shocked.
They need to see this information, and I'm so thankful that individuals like you are getting this information out and giving the opportunity to do that. They only hear the other side, because this side of the scientific debate is highly censored. If you're pro-vaccine and you're a doctor or a scientist, it becomes easier to get things published. It becomes easier to get your message out. You're invited to meetings. But if you talk about the dangers of the vaccines, then it's very difficult to get things published in scientific literature. You're not invited to scientific meetings, and you're marginalized in the media. So
it's really, for me it's like crazy. Follow the money.
Money talks, and if I wanted to make money, then I could promote vaccinations. I've done enough research, and I could certainly come up with some fake studies in order to promote vaccines. But the issue has to be bigger than money. It has to be bigger than money. And I think even on both sides of the debate, it's bigger than money. I do not want to see children go through what my son has had to go through. It's excruciating, not for me, but for him. It is very, very difficult when you have a child that's dealing with physical pain, and he does deal with head pain, gut pain, joint pain, so many different things. And there's nothing that you can do about it. That's the most frustrating feeling in the world. So if I have to speak out then for the rest of my life, I will, because we need to end chronic disease in children.
But they have even not to fake the study. If this is common to take another vaccine for the placebo, it's not a problem to have a good result for them.
Right.
So
if they're correct, then why don't they do the proper study?
Yeah, for sure. If they take just the real placebo,
yes,
there will be a big difference, and then they cannot sell the vaccine.
Right.
That's easy.
It's very simple. They will not do the study. They will not even have an open debate, scientist to scientist. They're very, very afraid of having an open debate. Yeah. And we hear things like the science is settled. Trust your doctor. Why? They haven't earned our trust. We're in a chronic disease epidemic, that extends, it's a pandemic, extends the United States into the EU, into Southeast Asia. There is an epidemic of chronic disease in children. So why should we trust you if you haven't been able to solve this problem?
Somebody was telling me, if you really go through the study of the corona vaccine, as a doctor, you would never give the vaccine to anybody.
I completely agree. There are so many things wrong with the COVID vaccine that it's difficult to know where to start. First of all, it's genetic material. And although they say it's ribonucleic acid, RNA, and that it degrades quickly in the cells, that's not true. It's chemically fortified not to degrade in cells. So it persists. It gets into your bloodstream. It gets into all of your organs, even though the powers that be lied to you and said, oh, it will stay in your upper arm and it will make a little spike protein. No, we've seen people who are making this spike protein, which is very toxic for the body. We've seen individuals making this spike protein specific to the vaccine for over 2 years after they received the vaccine. They're still producing spike protein. That's not immunology, that is poison.
Yes, you're right. With what we know from the past years, I personally would no longer get vaccinated at all. Are there any vaccines that you still consider meaningful?
If somebody produced a vaccine that was safe and effective, I would be the first one to promote it. If it was safe, it was effective, if it could end disease, and if the benefits outweighed the risks, then I would promote that vaccine. Nobody has produced that. If you look at the foundation of the CDC vaccination schedule, none has been properly tested. So how can I go out on a limb and say, oh, this is safe, or this is safe in isolation? Truly, I have seen a child receive one shot, and that one shot can push them into a neurodevelopmental disability, an autoimmune disorder. It just takes one. You know, people say, well, I'll space them out. I'll get less than, one at a time. I'll find the safe ones. Every time that advice is given, there's always an exception of some child who received one vaccine, MMR, DTaP, hepatitis B, rotavirus, one vaccine, and they've had an adverse event. So if that changed, then I would change my message. I do not see that changing. I do not see that the pharmaceutical industry has any compulsion to make vaccines safer, so my message therefore doesn't change.
And also your result in the other study with unvaccinated children, they're even healthier. Why should I take a vaccine? That's another question.
Healthy immune systems fight off disease. And so if we preserve the health of the immune system, then we create a robust mechanism that you can fight off infectious diseases. Many of these diseases also were in steep decline before the vaccines were even introduced. You look at measles, you look at pertussis, you look at rubella. They all were in very, very steep decline. Children were not dying of these diseases. Maybe they would get the disease and have an infection maybe for 8 to 12 days, but they were not dying from it. That is because of universal sanitation, in developed countries. That is because of other medicines that were used to treat these infectious diseases. So nobody talks about that. Nobody talks, they talk about the miracle of vaccines, how vaccines in the United States saved over 1 million lives, but they do not tell you that at the same time, that number, 1 million lives, was based on a disease, diphtheria, that is in horse manure. Americans don't generally encounter horse manure every day. In the 1800s and the 1900s, they did. We do not encounter raw sewage. So if you look at a disease that comes from that vector, then you would never, you would never see it if we had a vaccine, or even if we didn't have a vaccine. So.
Okay. What are your predictions for the future of medicine in the United States and globally? Is there hope?
I certainly believe there is hope. I had never imagined in my wildest dreams that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. So this is a big achievement. And I think that more individuals are waking up regarding the dangers of mandatory vaccines. They're pushing against mandatory vaccines in their individual states. And that's forcing people to wake up. That's forcing their practitioners. You know, gone are the days where you could require all of your kids in your pediatric practice to be vaccinated. So many people are choosing either not to vaccinate fully, or they're choosing not to vaccinate at all. And so these people are demanding better medical care. That is a marketplace force that is going to start to create alternative systems that work much better for society.
Brian, thank you very much for your work. It's so important, and it was a big pleasure to meet you, and I hope we keep in touch. And then if you have any result, just let me know. I'm really open to publish as soon as possible the new result, because I'm open for that. I'm really against vaccine at all. I don't see any benefit, but it's my personal opinion. Everybody can do what he wants,
right,
as long we are not forced to. Mm-hmm. And this is the big problem. And I hope that the people understand my body, my choice, for everybody of this world. In this case, thank you very much for everything. I wish you all the best, and talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Ja, liebe Leute, das war das Interview mit Brian Hockers. Ich bin sehr dankbar für diese Information. Ich hoffe, es hat euch gefallen. Und in dem Sinne würde ich sagen, glaubt mir nichts, was ich sage. Recherchiert selber und verbindet die Punkte. Bis dann. Tschüss zusammen. Bye bye.